Now we go to Michael Shure, political correspondent for the Young Turks on Current TV. Michael, let's start with yesterday's speeches. Of course, we had the Michelle Obama speech, and that was, I thought that was very good. We kind of did an analysis of it. I found myself thinking after the Julian Castro speech, interestingly enough, a lot of the content of the speech was not that different from the Marco Rubio speech, both coming from kind of a Hispanic American point of view. What I think the difference really was in is that when Marco Rubio said some of those things, I found myself thinking, yeah, and if it were up to the Republicans, none of your story would even be possible, and that made it seem much less genuine to me. What do you think about the Castro speech?
You know, I hadn't thought of that. It's an interesting analysis you made of it in comparing it to Rubio's speech. On its own, the Castro speech, I thought was a strong speech. Listen, the keynote speech has lost its luster, both only because they've sort of truncated this to 3 days. I thought the same thing for the keynote in Florida, that it lost its luster because of the 3-day schedule. It used to be its standalone thing. Now it's wedged in with a vice president or a first lady or the president. So it isn't as important as it once was, and maybe the move to 3 days is temporary, I don't know. But to compare Castro to Rubio, their experiences are so different. And I think it's important to highlight what I think even the Republicans admit, which is that the Cuban-American influence or experience, the Cuban-American experience here in the United States is not typical of the Latin or Hispanic experience in the United States. So what Julian Castro was talking about yesterday was different because the origins of it are so different as well.
No question about it. And being from Argentina myself, we've talked about on my show for a really long time that if you look broadly at American, Hispanic, or Latino voters, as they may be called, the only area that is even remotely conservative are Cuban Americans who, in great part because of the political context, many of them kind of a response to Fidel Castro, the reaction when you come to the U.S. is vote for what appears to be the furthest thing from that, and that would be the American right wing. But otherwise, American Hispanic voters, very, very liberal, and that's why depending on white votes so significantly on the Republican side is just not going to work much longer because of demographic changes.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that the upper hand that the Democrats have, and I do believe that if President Obama wins re-election, immigration, a real comprehensive immigration reform is certainly on the agenda. And I think that the Republicans eventually, as they did with miscegenation, as they did with civil rights, are going to have to see that for what it is, because they're going to need those votes. And yeah, the Cuban vote, as you mentioned, is very different. Also, they came over with money, a lot of them, at the very beginning, which makes it very different in a lot of ways as well. A lot of upper-class Floridians, a lot of the wealthiest Floridians are Cuban. And so I think that also separates them from what is the typical, we should say, makeup of a Hispanic voter in the country. But going back to your thesis about these two speeches, yeah, I think you're right. I'd have to look at Rubio's speech again, but I trust that you're right. And if that's the case, then it does draw an amazing contrast between who the Democrats are talking to and who the Republicans are talking to.
Talk a little bit about the atmosphere now that we've gotten a full day of these speeches, and we're going into BillClinton tonight as well, a much anticipated speech. What's it like there?
Well, it's a totally different animal than Tampa was. I don't know what the reason is. I mean, you can be kind and say it has to do with the venue. It has to do with a less sort of, bolted down kind of feeling about the security here and access to the perimeter. But the truth is there's an energy here in the hall that didn't exist. It's because they like their candidate. You also see America here. You see our country in the makeup of the people that are attending here. And in Tampa, you saw our country club, as it were, because it was a very different demographic that was there. The energy in this hall, it's hard to communicate to you and to other people what it's like, but it is when you close your eyes and you picture this sort of raucous political conventions. That's what we had last night, and that was before Bill Clinton, that was before Joe Biden, that was before Barack Obama.
So what are you expecting from the Clinton speech? I thought Michelle Obama did a great job of alluding to a ton of policy. I mean, I outlined 10 or 12 different political issues she alluded to in a way that was not particularly partisan nor policy, nor wonky in any way. What are we expecting from Bill Clinton?
Yeah, Michelle Obama was wielding what one Republican said to me last night was a velvet knife, it's actually an apt metaphor. I think that the speech will take a little of the velvet off, but he's an elegant speaker as well. He makes his point in sort of backhanded ways very often. I think that he's going to talk about social issues. I think he's going to talk about small business. I think he's going to really, for the first time, come out in wild favor of this president. He's up against the NFL tonight. Let's not forget that. It's why I thought, I think that he is not the best spokesperson for women's issues, but if they were trying to get women to pay attention to this convention tonight, I think they're going to do that with Bill Clinton a little bit. I think he's going to be not as soft a touch as the First Lady was, but I think he's going to come home with points about the American experience that Barack Obama represents, and that's what they're trying to do.
All right, I'm looking forward to it. Michael Shure, the Young Turks on Current TV. We'll check that out, of course, and then we'll check in with you tomorrow after the Clinton speech and preview, of course, President Obama's big speech. Now indoors, not outdoors. We already talked about the reasons for that, and then we'll see what the weather ends up actually doing tomorrow night.
Okay, David, it continues to be a pleasure. We'll talk tomorrow.